In previous videos, we looked at how to make a dashboard using Dash. Now let's look at how to make a dashboard using Streamlit. So we're going to use the web analytics that we pulled from the YouTube data. And in a previous video, we looked at analyzing who visits the YouTube channel. In this video, we're going to take that information and build a dashboard from it. So we're going to need to link to our Google Drive where we have put these documents. So just to get us a little started here, let's open up. So if you're working along with us, we are at Dr. Steph Powers. You can't see the top of that. We're at drstephpowers.github.io/BIA. And here we're working in Dashboards Part 2. You'll also find here in the data section here on the left, the data sets for the web analytics for the YouTube data. So we're going to be looking at things like gender and geography. So you will need these data sets put somewhere into your Google Drive. So we'll dump those into our Google Drive if we haven't already from our web analytics videos. And then we will go here to Dashboard Part 2 and open in Google Colab. So don't forget to make sure that you are logged into your Google Drive and that you save a copy to your drive so that you can edit and run the code. So I'm just going to switch over here to one I have running here. All right, so first thing we do is import pandas as PD, and we import from google.colab import drive. This links to our Google Drive where we have dumped all of our CSV files. So you want to make sure you run that. When you run that, it will ask you which drive to attach to and select all in terms of permissions. You're giving Google access to Google. All right, so as we go to create a Streamlit dashboard, the first thing we will do is do a pip install of Streamlit. So we need to install the Streamlit program. It is not there by default. And then what we're going to do is we're going to import Streamlit and then have it populate a file called app.py. And so everything needs to go in this file that we're writing, including importing the packages itself. So what we'll see as we look at a more complicated dashboard is everything has to go into a single little code cell right here, all together in one location, as opposed to as we work through some of these analytics processes, you know how we have it in one cell and then we do the next thing and we do the next thing. When you're doing dashboards, it all has to be inside of one. So it's all self-contained. You're basically saying, here, write this script, and then you're calling the app to create the dashboard and populate it with everything that was in that script. So it's all going to be self-contained. So we're going to write a file called app.py, and inside that file, we're going to import Streamlit as st. Now, this is just the very basic Streamlit example that comes from Streamlit itself. And so you can see st is the Streamlit package, and then there's a number of functions within it. So one thing we'll do here is create a slider bar, and that allows us to select a value. And then we write as our output, x squared is x times x. So what will happen is we will move the slider, get a number for x, and then it will do a calculation here where it will say this number, let's say we select 5, 5 squared is, and then it does 5 times 5. All right, so let's see how this actually works. So we write our app.py. Then the next thing we do is we will do an install of a local tunnel. So we're essentially creating a prototype of a dashboard. You can pay subscriptions to companies, use the same process, and then the output is a physical dashboard on an actual external website. Since we're doing this here, free open source, what we're going to do is just create a demo dashboard. So we're going to install local tunnel. Okay. And then our command here is going to give us a number that we will then use when we call our dashboard. So we're going to do Streamlit run the app, and it is going to use port 8501 to create a local tunnel to put our dashboard we've created on. So if you go to this URL here, it's always some weird combination of names. Then what it will do is it'll open this viewer here, and you need to type in a password. Well, the point of the code before is to give you the IP number for you to put here into this password. So we hit click submit, and what it does is it's going to populate our dashboard. It was a very simple dashboard, right? All we have is a slider, so we would choose, say, the number 32, and you can see that it writes 32 squared is 1024. So a very basic dashboard. We change the number on the slider, it changes the output here. It writes now 21 squared is 451. When you're running your demo, dashboard, it'll continue running here, which means you can't run other code. So when you're done running your demo, you would just stop the run here. So very, very basic dashboard. All it has is a slider and some text. We're going to look at making a much more complicated dashboard. So in fact, what I'm going to do is I am actually going to run the whole thing, and then we'll talk about how it is created. So I'm going to install my Streamlit. I am going to then write my app file, and it's going to include everything I need in it. So it's going to have to import the functions and packages inside of it. All of the configurations are going to be inside of it. All of the importing of data is going to be inside of it. And in this particular case, I'm going to have a sidebar on the left where I'm going to be able to have some sliders and selection boxes. Then I'm going to have it make different plots, and so I can define those as functions ahead of time. Then I'm going to have multiple columns in my dashboard. So this one is going to be on the left, is going to have some numbers and some donut charts. And then in the center, I am going to have a choropleth map and a line chart. And then on the right, I'm going to have a table and just some information. So just like with our little tiny demo, we will install the local tunnel, and we will then get our IP number, and then we run our app through a port 8501, and then you're going to click on the URL here where it's the one that's some random words, paste in, and it's going to start populating your dashboard. So our dashboard here has a number of features. On the left, we have a slider where we can change the year we're looking at. And that's because here we want to look at, for our YouTube channel, how many viewers were there that year and how does that compare to the year before. So this little up here is how much extra viewers compared to the previous year. Then if we change the range of years, what we get is a timeline here, a line chart that shows viewership over time. And so you can decide if you want to focus on 2016 to 2018, or maybe we want to go longer term, or we can focus more on the current time period. So we can look at the variability in viewership. Then what we have here on the left is the ability to change our donut charts that we have here, looking at our viewer demographics. And so we can look at what percentage 25 to 34-year-olds are. We can look at male and female, and we can see here the percentage breakdown of our viewership. We have our choropleth map here. We have our line chart, of course. And then on the far right, what you have is the video titles and showing you the viewership. So you can do a quick comparison here in terms of the top videos by your viewers. If you want to change the color scheme, we have some choices here. So we could switch to greens, and that's going to change our choropleth. We can change the donut charts there. Right now I have the line chart not specifying a color. You could tie it in with these and have it be the same color. So there are some choices on how you set that up. So what we want to do is look at how do we create this dashboard. All right, so I'm going to then go out of this, keep going to the wrong one, and I'm going to stop it so that I can run the other code. Now, just a reminder, we're using the data from the web analytics videos. And so I'm actually just going to show a bit from the web analytics videos of the type of data we have. Now here I am loading the data from outside of that dashboard Streamlit. And so this is just for viewing to understand what data we have. We'll have to call it separately inside of our Streamlit dashboard. So don't forget, if you are importing data, that you will need to dump it somewhere into your Google Drive. For me, I have put these YouTube files into my drive, into a folder called BIBA Handbook, inside a folder inside that called Chapter 7, inside a folder in that called YouTube, and that's where you find totalviews.csv. So we are using pandas to read CSV. So of course, make sure that you have imported pandas as PD at the beginning of your notebook. So we're just going to look at what we have here. So our total views, you'll recall from our web analytics videos, shows the date and the number of viewers total on the channel. We have data on age. So again, importing age from wherever you dumped it. And so again, I have it inside a folder called BIBA Handbook, Chapter 7, YouTube. The file is called age.csv. When we look at this, I can get the viewer ages. I can get the watch time as a percentage. And so you'll recall from the dashboard, I took the viewer age and the watch time hours percentage and turned that into a donut chart. The total views, I'll turn into that line chart to show the views, number of views over time. Okay. And then we can import gender, same thing. Make sure you find the file. Again, if you're looking for these files, where did my go? Hang on. If you're looking for these files, you will find them on the GitHub site under data. That is where you will find, we're looking at here, gender, geography, somewhere is age. Yeah, you can see them all right there. So that's where you can download them, dump them into your Google Drive. All right, let's go back. Okay, so we put it in that gender. You can see here we have different gender, male, female, user specified. And again, we have watch time percent hours. So we can create that donut chart that shows the breakdown of male, female, and user specified. For content, again, import the content in. We can look at it and we can see here's the video titles. And we can look at number of views. You'll recall in the dashboard, it's of course telling me connection error because I turned it off. But you'll recall over here on the right, we had the top videos and the number of views with a little colored bar to show a comparison of that. So we're going to pull that from the content table there. Then we have geography. So we're going to import it in. Geography.head shows us the table. Here we're looking at views and geography. You'll recall from the web analytics videos that the challenge with creating a choropleth from this data is that the choropleth requires three alphabetical letters for the geography to lay it on the map. We ultimately want to create this map here showing the colors of where the viewership are. So in the web analytics videos, we took this and we converted this column called geography to have 3 letters instead of 2. To do that, we use ISO 3166, so we had to install that. And then from there, we could import countries. Okay. And the first thing we did is that we told it that it was a string and that it needed to exclude all of those that were NAN, because of course we're only giving labels to ones that have actual country names. And then we created a loop to go through and we were finding the ISO alpha, which is the 3-digit codes that go with each of those. So essentially what this 3 steps here are is that we took another data set that we got from ISO 3166, which is the list of all those countries that had both the 2 alphabetical labels and then the 3. And so it's helping us then match that to our data set. So we did this in the web analytics video. We ended up with this third column where we now have, where we now have 3 letters and the 2 letters. The other thing here was that we wanted to specify these views here were integer. So that was another step we took in the web analytics to make sure that we could make the choropleth. So these are all the same steps from our video about making a choropleth in the web analytics videos. And all I'm doing is rerunning them here so that we have this table ready to go. Now, when we do Streamlit and we're creating dashboards, remember we have to pull all the data inside of the dashboard itself. So this last step here is new. This is to take that new table that has the 3 alphabetical labels and our views being an integer, recognizing they're numbers and not text. And it's going to actually just save it to a CSV. So that way when we build our Streamlit dashboard, we can just pull in all the data sets, each CSV file, and then output the dashboard. So this line here does the name of the table, which in this case is geog_filtered. We're going to make it a CSV, and you need to simply tell it where. So I want to dump it in the same location as all of those other CSV files, which, as I said before, I put in a folder called BIBA Handbook inside my Google Drive, inside Chapter 7, inside a folder called YouTube. So I'm just helping this go join everything else so I can call them all when I get into Streamlit. So it's going to be the name of your file, and notice there's no underscore here. When you do namings of files, having punctuation and things like that can screw stuff up. So I've just called it geog filtered, which means later on I have to remember that's what I need to call it when I import it back. So geogfiltered.csv, and index equals false because I don't need it to have an index. I just need it to have these labels and this data. So I want to make it look just like this. So when I do that, then what you can see here, when I go into my BIBA Handbook, Chapter 7, YouTube, you can see I have a geog filtered that's been added. So now I have all of my data together, and I'm not going to use all of these, but these were all the ones from the web analytics videos. So we're just going to hit a couple of them: age, content, gender. We're going to use our geog filtered and our total views to build our dashboard. All right, so let's get started building our dashboard. We do the pip install q Streamlit to install Streamlit. And then again, everythy else needs to be in the single cell of our Google Colab in order to run it. So we're going to write a file called app.py that's going to contain everything for our dashboard. We need Streamlit as st because this is a Streamlit dashboard. And then we need to have pandas as PD so we can import all those CSV files. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to use a couple different types of data visuals. We're going to use the plotly.express like we did with Dash. But the benefit of Streamlit is it has other packages and ways to do data visualization, not just Plotly. And so here we're going to also use the Altair and called alt as short for like the donut charts. Okay. And then the challenge I have with this particular data set is that I have the dates. If I just go back up here, so you can see I have dates here as year and month and day, but I want my sliders to not be day specific. I want to be able to summarize information by year. So I am actually going to need the from date time. I'm going to need to import date. So I'm going to use that to help me convert that information into years. The next step of your Streamlit is to configure your page. So your page title is what is going to appear up here. Oh, you can't even see it. How about this? How about move this down a bit? All right, here we go. There we go. So you can see here where it says YouTube Analytics as the title, the tab. And so that's what you're naming right there. All right. You can have a little icon on your page. We're going to do a wide layout. We want to have multiple columns of information, and so by doing wide, we can fit in all these columns. So you can see here, right, we have on the left, we have that can hide and go away, but then we also have all this room for our 3 different columns. So we're going to go wide. Okay. All right. And the sidebar, see, it's expanded. That allows for that hiding that I just did, right? So we can make it appear and disappear. As you configure the things you want to change, then you can make it disappear. Okay, so that's that expanded command. And we're going with a theme here of dark. You can see the dark on like the choropleth. Okay. All right, so the next thing I need to do is I need to import all of my data. So you can see here we are loading in our total views data set. So a CSV, where is it located, right? It was in that YouTube folder. Age, geog filtered, that's the new one I created, not the original geography one. This is the one that now has the 3 alphanumeric labels. And then I have gender and content. Now, the content one, I'm just going to show you back what it looked like before. The content one had this first row with the totals. Because I actually want to create this list here on the right that has the most viewed videos and the number of views, I don't need that totals row, and it's just going to create problems for me. So what I can do is I can get rid of it right away in the import by simply doing content.tail -1. That gets rid of the first row. So I've just taken care of it now as I'm pulling it in, so I don't have to deal with it later. All right, then the next thing that we do is we populate the sidebar. So we're going to do with st.sidebar : and then you give it a title. So this title here is the analytics dashboard. When you look at it on the left, that's the title that you're seeing right here. Okay. And then this is where you're going to add your sliders, your selection boxes. And so I'm going to have a slider where they can choose a single year. And it's going to range from 2013 to 2024. I'm going to call it yearly data. And this last number here is where I want the slider to rest by default. So if we go back in, sorry, it's no longer running, right? Because I turned it off. It would start at whatever I set here. So I started at 2020, and then I moved it while we were tinkering around. So you can tell it where it's going to start by default. The reason I'm doing a single year is because I want this information here with number of views to align with that. So here's the number of views in 1 year. Here's how much it changed versus the previous year. Now, I need a range of years for my line chart. My line chart needs a start and a finish. So I can create this range here so that I pick the beginning and the end that appear on that line chart. So to do that, I'm going to use still the slider from Streamlit. I'm going to call it select a range of years. And then just like before, you give it the lower bound and the upper bound. The difference is that when you give it the point at which you want the slider to start at, you're giving it both a left and a right, a lower and an upper, not just a single. So then it knows that it can actually change that slider in both directions. Otherwise, it looks just the same as the slider above it. In each case, you'll see I use st_right to output some words just below it. So you can see it's confirming year is 2018 in this setting, and this 1 year range is 2021 to 2014. So as I change the slider, I can see what I've chosen right below it. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some selection boxes. So I'm going to have this drop down where I can choose for the different age ranges. So if you go back to look at the ages, here we have 13, 17, 18, 24, 35, 44, 45, 54. So what I want is it to populate that drop-down box with this list of years here. And that's so later on, I can create a donut chart that shows how much this particular group makes up the total percentage of viewers. So if I select 18 to 24, then my donut chart is going to show that's 43% of the greater whole. Okay, so that's what I'm creating, is I want to be able to change this here, select an age group, so that it will change this number here and the donut chart. Okay. So I'll just go back. Here we go. Okay, so I'm just creating the sliders. The selection boxes. So I'm going to use Streamlit, select box. It's going to say select an age group. It's going to say age, viewer age. That is the table of data I imported, age, and the column name, which was viewer age. So I have to connect it to that data set so it knows to pull those different labels. Then it's going to write age group colon, and whatever age group I select is going to go below it. So you can see here I've selected 25 to 34. Okay. I'm going to repeat that for gender. So again, select box, right? Select a gender as the text, and then it's going to pull the choices from gender, that table that I imported here, gender, and it is going to then pull the column called viewer gender, and that was the male, female, and user specified, so that I can create this donut chart here that shows what percentage of viewers are male, female, or user specified. Okay, so I'm creating these drop-down menus here that will change my graphs here. All right, then the last I have here are color schemes. So you can have an option if you want on your different selectors here to actually change the colors. So here we have select a color theme, and that changes the choropleth because it doesn't get just a color green, it gets a range of colors. So it has a name that goes with that. So there's all different colors of green. Okay. And you can see here some of the options. So greens, blues, but there's also ones that are multiple different colors. There's rainbow. And the idea with these color themes is that they are gradiated. So when we do the choropleth, darker colors mean more. Okay, so because those need an actual multiple number of colors, we select that separately from below where we need a single color. So if I select a single color from the list, blue, green, orange, red, then I can have some of my things like my donut charts to be a particular color. They only get one color. Okay, and so we're just specifying here's the different colors that those could be, which means when we generate the donut charts, we need to specify what it's going to do with those different colors. So here I have blue, green, orange, and red. Select a color. It shows it here as the choice below. Okay. All right. Well, we didn't do ST right for those. We could, if you wanted to say below them that this is the color theme that was chosen or this is the color that was chosen, you would add this st.right below it where it would say color theme, and then this would be a selected color theme. And then you'd repeat that st right, and this would be single color, and then you would say selected underscore color is what it's going to output. So you can choose whether or not you want to have that text underneath your selection boxes. The next step is going to be to create our images. So we are actually creating functions here. These are some generic ones. And in fact, this choropleth one comes from, if we go to the Streamlit website itself, they have an example dashboard where they've created a dashboard. You can see there's some other types here. And so some of the code has come from them. Of course, they're the ones to go to. They created the dashboard in terms of the sample code for different things. So the choropleth one that we're using here comes from them. So you don't have to come up with these functions all by yourself. The one that is here for the choropleth says we're going to provide a data table, And then we need to have our IDs for the locations. Then we need to pick the input column. That's going to be like number of viewers. And then we have our input color theme. That input color theme is going to be populated by what you chose for the selected color theme. Okay. Now this is just defining the function. So here's what goes in. You give it, we'll give it to it later to make that function. And then it's going to use Plotly Express to create a choropleth. And it's going to take whatever you specify as the data set. And the location is going to be whatever you give it as the input ID. The color is going to be what you give it as the input column. That's because it needs to know which is the numbers, where darker, higher numbers, lighter, lower numbers. And then for the color continuous scale, that's where we're going to give it the color theme so it knows whether it's darker greens or darker reds. Okay, and when we hover over it, we want it to have a label attached to it so we know what's Canada, what's India, and so that's going to be the input ID. So this is actually the formula you've done before for choropleths, and all we're doing is wrapping it in a function called makeChoropleth, where it gets populated based on the inputs we provided. So I'm actually just going to scroll down to the building of the dashboard so you can see this. This is where we're going to make the choropleth. We're going to use the data table called geog filtered. We're going to use ISO alpha, and we are going to use number of views. The darker the color, the more views. And then we have here selected color theme because it's going to change with whatever we choose here on the left for selecting that color theme. So we are actually calling the choropleth function later. Okay. What we're doing here is just defining it early on to allow for some formatting. You don't have to do that. You could just make the choropleth inside as you're going. This is just so that you can adapt it for different tables and different things. Okay, so we're going to make a choropleth. So our first section, we're just creating some functions to help define what we're going to create later. Then in this set of code, what we have here is we are making a line chart. That's this line chart that you see here. And so what we need to do is we need to have some input table. And then from that table, we need an X value. That's going to be the dates. And the Y values, that's going to be, what do we have? Number of viewers. Now, the challenge we have here is we want to tie our line chart to our range of years. So we're doing this as a function here so that we can take our original data. Remember, it was year and month and day. And we need to first tell it that it is a date. So we're going to use pandas, and we're going to make sure it knows that it's a date timestamp. Then what we want to do is once it knows the date timestamp, we can then use that date time that we imported earlier. Okay. So we have our date time to then have it identify the year because we just want to pull out the year. Okay. Now that we have the year, we can then create a range where we are pulling from the full data set just those that have between the lower year and the upper year. So the idea is we take this full data table. Let's go all the way back. Here's our full data table. And what it's going to do is it's going to say, okay, it's going to take all this. It's going to recognize that it's a date and time. And it's going to then pull the years out of it. And if we in our slider say 2015 to 2017, then it's going to shrink the table down to just be 2015 to 2017, and then it's going to plot the line chart. And that's why we were able to, when we changed the sliders, change what was appearing here. So we're taking just a typical line chart and we're adding a couple extra commands here in order to, one, tie this chart here to these sliders, but also then amend the chart so that whatever you pick as the sliders changes the data table it's built from. So that's what this code is that we're looking at right here. It is going to say Make sure that you know that it's date and time. Pull just the year. We'll create a new column called years in that table itself. And then what we're going to do is we are going to filter our table so that we're just between the year range, and 0 is going to be the first number and year range 1 is going to be the second number. And then you can specify in terms of inclusive. If you put inclusive equals false, it will not include those 2 years. We want it to include those 2 years. I don't know why it's not going over. So we have inclusive equals both to say, okay, if I say 2015 to 2017, include both 2015 and 2017. So this filters down our table to be the years that are within that range that we specified in the slider. Once we have that, we can then build a line chart using Streamlit's line chart. So not just Plotly Express, but Streamlit also has built-in visuals that uses our new shrunken table, DF range, and it is going to take whatever we specify as the input for X and the input for Y. Because this is a function, that input X and input Y will specify later, and the name of the table will specify later. You would do this if you had here, you want to change that it was a line chart for total viewers. Maybe it's a line chart for female viewers. Depending on your data, you could actually have it toggled over here to not only change the time period, but change the data set as well. So that's the reason to create these functions, the line chart one and the choropleth, is that you could have your dashboard actually change which data table it pulls this from and which data table it pulls this one from, depending on what you toggle here on the left. Okay. Our YouTube analytics data doesn't have that level of complexity, so we're not changing the data source, even though we're using these functions here. Then the last one that we're building here is the donut chart. Now this code looks complicated and overwhelming, so just want to note that you can take your data sets from elsewhere. You take your code from elsewhere, right? So this code here comes from the Streamlit site, and where they're making these. Okay, so I saw those. I thought, I want things like that. Notice how with these, it just shows one part of the donut, not all the different pieces of the pie. And so I want to create this type of image. Well, here is the code to do that. That's this. So we just copy this code into our own set. You can also chat GPT to help you build this set of code when you're doing this level of formatting and tinkering. So let's walk through what this one says. This one says that we're going to have a function that makes a donut, and it's going to have 3 components to it, which is it needs a number, an input response, it needs some text, and an input color. Well, our slider is going to specify the color. That was this green or blue or red that's down here on the bottom. And if the input color is blue, then it's going to have 2 shades of blue. Okay, one for the particular group we're caring about, and then one color blue for everything else. And so that gives you like this, where you can see there's a dark green and a light green. Okay. Green, orange, red. This blue, green, orange, red, you've seen that before. That's this blue, green, orange, red. So depending on what you pick from this drop-down box, it is going to then specify that these are the 2 colors in the donut chart. That's all it's doing there. Then the next set of code here says we're going to use pandas. We're going to create a little table, and that table is going to have 2 components to it. It's going to have the category you care about, okay, whatever that name is. So in ours here, 25 to 34 years. And then it has everybody else lumped together. And so this table it's creating is going to say our input response is the 35.84%. And then everybody else is 100 minus that. So it's going to create these 2 categories out of all of the different groups that we have, the one we care about, and everybody else. And so it's just creating a simple table with whatever you pick as your input group, and then the percentages that go with it, and then everybody else's percentage. Then it's going to use Altair to create that donut chart. So this coding here is to create the donut chart, and you can go Altair donut chart. And so you can see here's the very basic code for it. We already have Altair imported, and then you see alt.chart, where it is going to have an inner radius. You can change how big that hole in the middle is, and you need some source of your data. That's the table that we just created. And then there is some formatting in terms of color and labeling. So what we have here is we have that inner radius 50. We have our source is that little table we just created. And then the rest is about color coding it. And so this this code here comes from that Streamlit example, right? Because I want to replicate the image they've created. Lots of people build templates for dashboards. Go find their Python code and you copy and paste the pieces you want to build the dashboard you want. So I can build the dashboard for my data to look the way I want by finding the code for the different components from lots of different templates. All right, so this is going to return the plot and some text. And so the text here is going to be that name of that particular category and the percentage. So here we have that 54.66 for male and the 35.84 for 25 to 34-year-olds. Okay, so all of that, the beginning section here, that was the functions I'm going to call later with my data in order to create my dashboard. So then we start fleshing out the dashboard. The dashboard, we specify that it's going to have 3 columns, and then how do you want it broken down? So here you can see that the middle column is bigger and that there is a medium-sized gap in between the columns. We don't want the words to run over on top of each other. So when we look at this, notice that this centerpiece is bigger, and that's where I'm going to put my choropleth and my linear chart, my line graph. And then you can see on the left and right, they are smaller. You can decide if they're going to be the same width so that they look the same. You can see that we've created the one on the right to be slightly bigger because it's a table. And even with that, we have to scroll. You have to go left and right to get that information. It doesn't fit entirely. You might, if you want this to display entirely, you want to make this bigger, then you have to make something else smaller or move it towards the center section. Okay, so then we start with column 0. Remember in Python, we start our numbering system with 0. And so what we're doing in this first set of code here is we are going to populate this left column. We want a title that says number of viewers. Then we want it to have the year that we select from our slider. Then we want to pull the number of views, and we want it to look at how much has increased from the previous year. So when we look at the code, this st.markdown is going to be the title, and the number of hashes or pound signs that you put there determines how big it is. The less that you have, so if you just had 1, it would be big size. The more you put, the smaller the text. So this is what's called markdown formatting. And so if you want it to be slightly bigger than what we have here, we'd remove one of these hash or pound symbols to get it to be bigger. At the point in time here, we can see we've made these kind of 4 headings all about the same size. Okay, now, what we want to do is we want to take the year we specified here on our yearly slider, and we want it to pull the total views for that period of time. So what I need to do is I need to use pandas to specify that my total views table, that's what we pulled in from here, total views, okay, And remember, it has the column in terms of date, and it was year and month and day. And what we want is we want to, lost my place there. We want to just pull the years because we want to match it to whatever's on that slider. So this 2 lines of code you see here look familiar. We've used those a minute ago. PD to date time says, okay, make sure you specify that this is a date time column. And then what we want to do is add a new column that is just the year. So just pull the years from those date times. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to have it look at those years, that is that new column, and find the ones where it matches what we put on the slider. So if we specify 2018, it's going to find all of the views by each day and each month for 2018. As long as it's not the first year, which is 2013, we are going to have it sum up all of those views. So it's going to have the total number of viewers for 2018 if I pick 2018 on the slider. Then it's going to take 2018 and subtract 1 year, get 2017. Okay. Then it's going to filter the total views by the 2017 year and sum up the number of views. I need to do this so that I can get this little up here that says the views between 2017 and 2018 increased by 68,000. So I need it to pull all the 2018, which are specified with my little slider here, sum up the views for that year, and then take that 2018, subtract a year to get 2017, and then total up all the views for that year. And then the difference between is what's going to put here in green. So that's what this code says. It says if it's not the first year, because you can't go back a year if it's the first year, find me the total by summing it all up. Find me the year before by taking whatever I specified as the year minus 1. And then finding me a new data set that is just that 2017 year, the year before, and then summing that up. So then I can find delta, which is the difference between. If it is 2013, so if it is the first year, then the delta is just going to be not given because you can't go back a year. So these calculations are to populate what is called a metric. So the metric here needs first a label. So that label is going to be the year chosen on the slider. Then it is going to be the view total. That's the sum that it calculated. And I need to specify that it's an integer, okay? Because that value needs to be a number and it needs to know it's a number. And then delta, which is going to be that change in viewership from 1 year to the next, it also needs to know that it's an integer. So that's why you see the int with parentheses around it. Okay. And then we've just closed that off. So ST metric will give you like this, where it's the numbers and you can have your little delta here. Okay. All right. So the next thing in our left here is the viewer demographics. And so that's going to be our donut charts. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a heading called viewer demographics. And you can see that there are 4 hashes or pound signs. And so that says it's going to be the same size heading as that number of viewers. Then what we're going to do is we're going to create the first donut. And our first donut is going to be gender. Now, what I need it to do is I need it to go find from the table. So let's go back up to the gender table. I need it to go to the gender table and look up whichever one is chosen on my drop-down menu here. So my drop-down menu here, male, female, user specified. I want it to go to the table, find that, and then I want it to provide the watch time hours % that goes with it. Okay, so when I look at the code here, that's what this says. This says take the table gender, locate where viewer gender is equal to the specified gender group. That's going to be the part that came from the slider. and then output here the watch time hours percentage. And then what you see here is where it says iLock index location 0. If you don't include that, it builds a table that has the row name and the column name, and I don't want it to be a table, I just want the number. I want the percentage watch time hours for male if male is what is chosen on my drop-down menu. So then what's going to happen here in the part below is I'm going to use that function I had before of the make donut. I'm going to give it donut 1, which is that number that goes with male, gender group, which in the drop-down menu we would choose male, and then the selected color. So my drop-down menu, I can select green, and on this drop-down menu, I can select male. So those are tied to, if we look at gender group and selected color, those are tied to the part that we saw before. Gender group and selected color. So those are tying to those. So then the other piece is just going to be the percentage it's pulling from the table, right? So that's, we're calling it donut 1 here. It's pulling that number from the table, and then it's putting it into the make donut function. And our make donut function is going to use that selected color. Choose green. It's going to have 2 shades of green here. It's going to create a donut chart where it has the percentage for male if that's what's chosen, and then everything else is going to be the other category, and that's what it's populating. So it's going to create this here. And then I just repeat that twice. I did once for gender, and then I did once for age. So here I'm going to go to the age table, to the column called viewer age, and find the age group that matches whatever is in this drop-down menu here, right? So 25 to 34-year-olds, it is going to then find the percentage that goes with that. So pull the watch time hours percentage. Remember, it pulls it as a full table. I don't want the full table, I just want the percentage. So I do index location 0. Just give me the number, okay? Then I take that number that I just pulled, I take the age group that was specified and the color from the choices here on the left, and it makes me a donut chart. So 25 to 34-year-olds selected here, color green, it makes the donut chart that you see here. Okay. The last piece that you see here is the assembly of the donut charts. And so I want it to be that it centers the donuts in that main column on the left. So here we have this main column on the left, but I don't want this donut to be here. I want it to be centered. And so I can create columns within that column. And here we have 0.2 and 0.2 and then 1 in the center. And so that way we can put our donuts. Notice the donuts go in column 1, not column 0. They go in column 1, so they're now in that center section. That center section, we're going to write the gender group that was chosen, and we're going to put in the Altair chart. Then we're going to write the age group, and we're going to put in the Altair chart. So this last piece here formats so that your donut charts are centered within this column. So you're creating your columns inside columns. Okay. All right. So we have now populated column 0. And the next piece here then is to populate the middle column, column 1. So column 1, we're going to call viewership, and it is going to have our choropleth and our line chart. So since we specified a function for making the choropleth and making the line chart, then we simply need to call them, okay? Give them the table. For the choropleth, it needs to know which of the variables is going to be the locations to match to the map. So remember, 3 digits. And then it's going to be which data is color-coded where darker is more. So that's the views. And the selected color theme is going to be tied to right, the selected color theme here. The other piece you can see here is that we are using the choropleth to make sure that it's matching the size of the space. So this Streamlit Plotly chart, calling the choropleth map, use container width equals true, is making sure that your choropleth is the width of your center column in your dashboard. Okay, because we don't want it to be too small or too big. We actually want it to be able to adapt as we change, right, the dimensions of the dashboard. Okay, here's our line chart. We're going to use the command make line chart. And we are, if you remember, in the function for the line chart, we are actually using a Streamlit line chart already. And so it's simply the additional pieces in the function were about matching it to the range specified in the slider. So that's why we have it as a function and not just call it straight as the ST line chart. So I am going to call the line chart, use the function make line chart here. It's going to be the total views with the date and the views. And recall the function had those extra steps where it converted the date into years and then specified from the slider what those years were. And that gave us this here that changed as you changed the range on the sliders. Okay, so that gives us, as we look at it, we've done the left, we've done the middle. On the right here, what we have is two pieces. We have a table of the top videos, and we have a little about section where we could write in some text. Here it says the data comes from Powers' YouTube channel. You could also specify that certain colors mean certain things if you had that set up in your dashboard. So you can have this little section where you write in some text. So to do this last column, okay, we have column 0, which was the far left, column 1, which is the middle, and column 2, which is the right. So we're going to name our column 2 top videos. You'll notice based on the number of hashtags or pound signs that are 4, it's the same size as the other ones. What we're going to do is create a data frame in Streamlit so we can have it show a table, just like we did with our dashboard. And so we're going to pull from the table content, and notice there's 2 hard brackets here. I'm going to pull just part of that table. So I just need the part that is the video title and the views. So if I go back to our content, I need the video title column and the views. And you'll recall that I didn't need the first row because it was totals. I'd already gotten rid of that with that tail -1 that I did earlier. So I just want to pull the video title and the views, and I'm going to have it create a table that is just those 2 pieces, video title and views. And I want to add in this little bar here to show how much difference there is in number of views between. So to do that, I'm going to take my mini table. So that's the first part. My mini table is 2 columns from the content table. I'm going to order them here. So video title goes first and then views goes second. I am going to hide the index. I don't need it to show me row 1, row 2, row 3. I don't need to specify the width. We're going to allow it to adjust as we change the size of the dashboard. But I do want to have some configurations of my columns. So notice here that video title is going to be a text column. So we're using Streamlit column config to tell it that the video title column is text. And then for my views column, I'm going to use Streamlit column config, and I'm going to create a progress column. That's that red bar that you see. You are showing it here that it is going to be doing that based on the views. So you make sure that that column is numbers. We're going to format that. And you need to specify a minimum and maximum. So it's going to range from 0 views to however much. And in this case, it's just the maximum number. So of that table, whatever has the most number of views, that's going to be a full bar. And then everything else will be a partial of that. Okay, so that's what this is. This piece here is giving you those red bars that you see right here. The other piece is saying that this other part is text. Okay. And then the last piece here, which my head is covering a bit, is just a little about box. This about box is where you can put in some notes. And so we have that here. We have it listed as an expander, which means if you have a lot of notes, you can make it so you can toggle it. So I just need to move my face. And so it is collapsible. That's what this little piece here is. That's by doing ST expander, you can make it so that you can hide it. So what we've done is we've said, okay, we're still in column 2. We are now doing a Streamlit expander section. We're going to call it about. We're going to say, yes, it can be expanded. And then you just write in what you want to be your text. You can add additional rows to it, hit return, and type some more information. And so we can hide and delete that information. So you have created, through this process, a full dashboard. We would, let's just do it. To populate the dashboard, we install Streamlit. We run our run our file, make sure everything's in it. Import all the packages, set the initial configuration, import all of your data files. If you have any functions that you need to define to use, make sure you do that. And then go one column at a time. What does that column look like? What is the text? What is it going to be populated with? You can do metrics, and that would be like this here. You can add in visuals like the Altair donut charts. You can specify Coroplus, line charts, lots of choices. In our previous videos, we looked at Sankey diagrams and we looked at gauges. You can add those in. And then you can add in tables, and then you can add in sections where you just have text. So we would then install the local tunnel. We then get an IP address. Remember, this is just a prototype. So when you run this Streamlit app, it is just appearing on a web browser that you can see. No one else is seeing it, for you to prototype it and see how well it turned out. And so then, I'm just going to move my face back down. You can see here as we change the year. Oh, there was a year where all the viewership went down. And we can change the range for our line chart. We can change the age for our donut chart. We can change the gender. We can change the color scheme. Change it all to reds. And you can have ones that don't change as well. So you can choose which ones are interactive, which ones aren't. And you can see here, I have those sliders that show me which videos are most viewed. So you've prototyped a dashboard. And then if this was you and your business, once you have it working the way you want, the next step is to actually have it continue to populate on a website. So that's where the cost starts to be in terms of, okay, who's hosting this information? And we can, if we're not going to update it just manually periodically by changing those data sets that we dump into Google Colab, or if you have it in, if you're using the greater Google, oh my goodness, my mind just went blank, that we use for our SQL. So if you're using Google Cloud or AWS, you're pulling from that. You can do it manual pulls that update your dashboard, or if you are running this through Amazon Web Service or Google Cloud, that it can continually update live because you've attached it to these data sets that are being stored in the cloud, and then you are hosting it on a website so it's continually visible by all of your stakeholders.